Well, I've known from my personal involvement in Hurricane Katrina and the Deepwater Horizon oil spill that you have to create unity of effort and a shared purpose if you're going to be successful in handling complex problems we deal with today. The community of interest that's been gathered around dealing with the emergency preparedness issues regarding schools is really important for community resiliency. I'm here today to support that effort and talk about it and kind of lend some thoughts that I might have.
Today's conference is vitally important. First of all, it's a collection of organizations that represent the needs and interests of kids and families, and it's rare that those groups come together. Second, we really started a dialogue today about resilience and how do we strengthen our communities and plan for the inevitability of these events. And so that's very exciting.
I think the one thing that this program really brought forth and a great take-home for people is that there's so many different aspects of emergency planning, preparedness, disasters, but the one key aspect is these relationships that we build before the disaster that serve us well during the disaster and serve us well in the recovery phases of that disaster to bring that community back to normal. It's all about those relationships.
I think the fact that Missouri is hosting this conference that assembles the leadership in child-serving organizations to discuss this topic shows that they have a real commitment to the issue and certainly places them among the top states in the country in thinking about this issue.
You know, from my part personally, I think it's really important people realize the power of relationships in a community and how important that is in preparing for a storm of the magnitude that we experienced in Joplin. You know, if the relationships aren't present, you can't build the resiliency you need to build. You can't have the communication, the connections that you need to have to be able to respond to disaster. And my point that I hope to drive home today is the power of relationships is critically important for community's ability to bounce back from a serious disaster.
Well, I don't believe you can solve any complex problem or deal with a crisis in today's really complicated world without creating unity of effort, and that means a shared purpose, a community of interest, everybody understanding that the only way to really get things done is through collaboration, partnering, and networking. And this certainly is one of the greatest examples I've seen of creating a community of interest and creating unity of effort around a really complex problem, and that's what I would pass on.
I hope people take away not only some ideas and lessons learned from prior disasters that they can include in their daily practice, but also realize that they already have assets that really are about building resilience in their communities. They already have some of those tools, and it's about connecting the dots and those relationships and collaborations, strengthening them for the future.
I personally believe that, again, preparing and being prepared begins with the individual. We all need to accept responsibility for being prepared. We all need to assume leadership roles in making for sure that our organizations, our communities, our families, and our personal life, we grow this culture of preparedness.
One of the things that struck me is a theme in every one of the presentations was the importance of relationships as a key component of the planning process. And I think people, when they think about emergency preparedness, think about the plans and the notebooks and the practice isn't something that people usually consider to be a key component of emergency preparedness. I think the second thing is that there was a lot of discussion about the major disasters like Katrina and the Joplin tornado, but to recognize that everyone in this room is probably in the next 10 years going to face some type of disaster. It may not be one of those major ones, but they will lose their power for 3 days or not have water or have sub-zero temperatures, have downed power lines, maybe an E. coli outbreak. So it's really the fact that everyone in the room in the next 10 years is very likely to experience some type of minor emergency for which they can and should be prepared.
You know, I think that we all know that there's going to be another disaster. It could be tomorrow, it could be the next day, it could be next month, next year, and we should all be thinking about what could happen. You know, we in Joplin had no idea that the work we were doing was actually preparing us for an EF5 tornado related to building relationships and resiliency within the community. But it's critically important that people be aware of the fact that it can happen anywhere at any time, and that it's important to be prepared. And hearing from a variety of speakers like they're going to be hearing today, hearing from today, I think is going to give a lot of different perspectives related to disaster preparedness. You know, it's always sad when you hear about communities that aren't able to respond to a disaster because they weren't ready. And I think that you can't have too many conversations about disaster preparedness. You have to prepare for worst case scenario, because what we're talking about is lives, and saving lives, and then again being able to rebuild and respond and come back and bounce back from a disaster. And I think we've been able to show that. Some remarkable resiliency in the community of Joplin since the storm, but the real work that took place happened before the storm. And I think the people that are here today realize that there's work that needs to be done if they're going to be prepared for something of that magnitude.